guys, this is Chris from Deus Ex Machina. In this series of videos, I'm talking about what inspired me in my youth to become a writer today. And I mentioned that it wasn't novels as much as it was art books that inspired me. And I meant in my previous video talked about the number one book series that inspired me, which were the TTA books. But there were other artists that inspired me as well. And this video is kind of talking about the rest, with the exception of three very important artists, which I'll talk to in a later video. But this one's a big one, and that is, of course, H.R. Giger. You know, you might think that H.R. Giger would be a major inspiration in my youth. But of course, H.R. Giger's unique style does point to very unique situations when you can employ his ideas in your own work, whether it be a novel or a role-playing game. H.R. Giger, New York City, for example, this is does not have a story at all. It more or less tells, and completely, I might add, in German, his time, Giger's time in New York, which inspired him to do these illustrations. So as a result, I mean, outside of these fantastic cityscapes, which have inspired me, there's a bastion in Amethyst, which is described to kind of look like this. Other than that, H.R. Giger's, he's fantastic. I absolutely adore the man, rest in peace. But he wasn't as inspirational as the other artists I've mentioned. There's a reason why he's included in this pile. But of course, you can't have a Giger collection without the seminal work, which is, of course, not the Necronomicon. You would think I have the Necronomicon. I don't have the Necronomicon. Instead, I have, of course, this one, Giger's Alien. I, of course, was a diehard fan. The reason why I'm a hammer fan of Giger was because of Alien, which was, for the longest time, my all-time favorite sci-fi franchise growing up. I've tried to keep these in really good condition. And unlike the Spacecraft book, which, you know, I had when I was a child, so I didn't take care of it, I've tried to keep this one in pretty good condition. Not that they're worth anything. These books aren't worth anything. I think you can get Giger's Alien for like $50. I have an amazing talent of always picking up the memorabilia that never appreciates in value. But this is a fantastic book if you ever want to know the detail of Giger's process in creating the visual style. But oddly enough, there were several other artists associated with Alien that you don't hear very much of, but they ended up becoming more inspirational for me in my later years. But that is Giger. And yeah, those are only two books of his I have. So from there, I'm going to talk about three artists very, very quickly that that I did collect books from, but they weren't as inspirational for various reasons. You would think I have a lot of fantasy books, being a person that writes seemingly a lot of fantasy, but I preferred the sci-fi ones. But I did actually end up collecting a few fantasy books. But you'd think I have Frank Frazetta, but I wouldn't. But I did have Boris Vallejo and Hajime Surayama. And these guys were very, very popular, especially in the 90s, especially if you're a teenager, right? I'm not going to open these and show you these because these are a lot of pinup girls and a lot of nudity, which is very common for both of these artists. In fact, I think 80% of these books show nude images, mostly female, of course. But these were pretty cool, but they never really drove my writing. I couldn't actually look through them to give me ideas. You would think so, but they never really did anything for me. But I do own them, which is kind of cool. But this one's a different story entirely. This is John Berkey. I always want to call him John Berkeley, but he's not John Berkeley. He's John Berkey. He's been gone for quite a few years. This book was actually written by his son. And John Burkey is a very, very famous painter. His ships are incredibly unique. They're almost abstract in their design. It's almost sometimes hard to make out what the ships look like. He has done work. He's done work for Star Trek. He did work for King Kong, Star Wars. Case in point, there we go. There is the Star Wars illustrations he did. You can see it's somewhat abstract. You can see it's not photorealistic. Great dramatic paintings, though. That's very wonderful. But his ship designs are very cool, but they're very unique. Lots of whites, lots of colors, kind of exposed electronics in some places. But the design work was so unique, I very seldom used them as inspirational in my writing. Which is too bad too, because look at them now and they're actually really good. But I really preferred the more precise drawings of people like Tony Roberts and Colin Hay, Jim Burns, Chris Foss, and so forth. But yeah, this was John Burkey, another fantastic artist. So yeah, this is an example of some of the other artists that inspired me. Anyway, like and subscribe, and this has been Chris from Deus Ex Machina.